Hey everybody, how y'all doing today? I am coming back with you on to all my first time PC builders who wants to build a PC for the first time and don't know what to do, don't know what parts to buy, and don't know anything in general. So I'm gonna go ahead and be explaining that to you in this short tutorial. And y'all just go ahead on and let's enjoy what I'm gonna tell y'all. Alrighty. First thing first, I tell everybody, how do you want your PC to perform? Are you looking for a regular PC? Basically, regular PCs are entry level PCs that is just basically onboard graphics, single monitor, keyboard, mouse, speakers, basic stuff. Or you may not need no speakers, it's just the regular basic stuff. With that said, that's for the entry levels. Entry levels just tend to be set out to just go ahead and do basically home business, etc. Nothing important, nothing too fancy with it. Just a basic setup that you could just use run your home business, schooling, home office, and that's about basically it. Now, to your mid levels and your extreme. Mid level people, PC performers, are people who play gaming, does a little streaming, little editing, etc. So you're gonna need a little more juice to go ahead on and do what you have to do. And enough with that said, you're going to need a graphic card added to it. When you get that graphic card, make sure that everything is in perspective of what you want it to do. Now for the extremers, those are the ones that does everything on a high octane level, that the frame per second rates there in the game. They look at quality of the game, etc. How fast their system renders everything. So that's the thing you need to go ahead and figure out what type of PC you want your PC to perform. Now, once you figure that out, you go to your platform. And enough said, pick your platform, Intel, AMD. I don't have to pick sides. Generally, I don't pick sides. If I want to use Intel, or if I want to use AMD, or if I want to use both, I go ahead and build my system set up on basically the performance I want my PC to push. Now, when you go ahead on and pick your platform, you go ahead on and then you do two things. One, I normally do this here, is tell everybody to go to PC Part Picker. With this here, you cannot go wrong with picking your parts. Once you go ahead on and pick your parts, you will understand the power and the system compatibility with picking your parts, because you could go ahead on and pick the parts and it made the motherboard may need a BIOS update. So I recommend everybody to go ahead on and go to PC Part Picker. Give you a little full tutorial of it. Now, first of all, when you do this, you want to start off with your motherboard. Yes, that's the main thing you start off with, is your motherboard, because you need to go ahead and figure out your platform. Now in this case here, I'm going to go Intel. I'm going to go LGA 1200. LGA 1200 is Intel. LGA 1150, LGA 1151, LGA 775 are all Intel based boards. So you cannot, anything that say LGA is Intel. Here, this say AM4, AM4s, AM3s, AM2s, AM2 pluses, FM2s, FM2 plus are all AMD motherboards. Now, some people sit down here going to the stores like, what is STRX4 or STR4? STR4 and STRX4s are Threadrippers. Those are your more high octane motherboards and CPUs. You see those there boards, you can only put a Threadripper processor on it. Those require a lot of power, and it has a lot of cores and a lot of threads to go ahead and push all your programs at high performance. Okay, now going back to the LGA 1200. Now, once I pick that, I'm going to go ahead and sort through price. This is one reason why I sit down and say budget. Yes, your budget. And that's another thing. When you pick that out, you got to go through a budget. How much you want to spend. This is where it comes out in step one, how you want your PC to perform and budget. That's all in that together. I don't have budget up there, but that's the main thing. You figure out how much you want to spend on your PC and how you want your PC to perform. Once you do that, you go to your platform. Now I'm going back. Let's jump back into PC Part Picker. Now, I'm going to go with ASRock. I'm picking my manufacturer. Bam. Now, I got my price set. Okay, I'm going with the 2 memory slot board. Now, the max memory of the board is 64 gigabyte. You could do this here. If you need power and speed, that's the next step, is going head on and picking how much power you want your PC to push and how much speed. Now, entry levels that I normally start off with dual kits, 16 gigabytes. That's 2 sticks of 8 gigabyte RAM. If the board is non-ECC, non-error checking, which is I'll mostly pull out my motherboards in, is non-ECC. So everything I have to worry about, everything being error checking. Error checking is it correct the programs as it goes along down the line, and it helps keep it running at the performance peak. Okay. Now here's 1.2. It's 134. I'm going back to this one here. I'm going with the B460 Pro. Matter of fact, let's go with the first one. That's an ITX board. You don't want ITX. Mini ITX is good. That means you go ahead and put it into a small form factor case, and it will take up less space onto your board. Okay, let's go into this here. I'm going to the 4 slots. Now here, it requires you to add up 128 gigabyte of RAM. Now, if you are a extreme gamer and you need all that memory, then that's what you do. You just go ahead and flex out all of your memory chips. Okay, let's add that to the cart. Now, here, when you use PC Part Picker, it gives you the price of how much you're spending, and it tells you where you can go ahead and buy your parts. Trying to go ahead and give you the best deal, more bang for your buck. This is one reason why I recommend everybody use PC Part Picker if you're a first-time PC builder, so you go ahead on and start modifying out your parts as well as your budget. Okay, now said, we got our board, ASRock H470 Phantom Gaming. Now, let's go ahead and pick the CPU. Now, CPU varies to the i9s, i7s, i5, i3s, as well as your G processors. Now, the reason why I do a lot of entry-level board, because I know a lot of people do not play games. A lot of people just want a basic PC that just go ahead and home office, home schooling, or just streaming purposes only. So, when you do that, some of these CPUs has the accelerated graphic that you can use the onboard graphic into it, and you have no issues with it. If you're not a gamer and you just want a regular PC, it's best to get a CPU, which they are known as APUs, Advanced Processing Units, which has the core threads as well as the graphic controller inside the chip. Now, here, this is the G500. This is a 2 cores, 4 threads. Okay, all depends. Now, when you picking your core clock, I always trying to make sure that you go 2.9 gigahertz or higher. The higher you go, the faster your system run. The more RAM you got in there, the more better your system run. Now, You could put 8 gigs of RAM, which is okay. You can start off at 8. But the best recommended is to go ahead and put 16. Why I say 16? Because 16 gigabyte of RAM will move your PC at a nice, adequate space. And if you are just an entry level gamer who wants to go ahead and start off gaming, start off at 1080p, then 16 gig of RAM is good. Always keep in mind, when you build a PC and you are a gamer, you need to be on 16 gigabyte of RAM or higher. Now, let's get back into the Intel Core processor. Now, here you see the prices, budget, how much you want to spend. And if you're not using a graphic card, always make sure you go ahead on and get the processor that has the graphic controller into it. Now I'm going to go with this Intel Core i3 10100, 4 cores, 8 threads, base clock at 3.6 gigahertz with a 4.3 boost, 65 watt thermal design power, coming at $114.99. Let's add that in. Now, as you see, board and processor are compatible. When you go ahead on and see this green bar, it means that you got no issues with the parts. And 2, with this Intel Core i3 processor, it has a stock cooler in there already. Now, if you don't want to use a stock cooler, you can always buy you a nice good cooler. And then if you plan on switching out your CPU, adding the GPU, then you good to go. When you add a GPU, you mostly get into streaming and editing and gaming, so that's for the mid-levels PC users. Now I'm gonna go ahead and remove this here, and then you're gonna go ahead on and see what I'm talking about when you add a CPU. Here it's in the red. That means I'm having issues with whatever the problem is. Once you see that, you're gonna go ahead on and see. Click on see details below. You're gonna click that there. It says warning, Intel i9 processors, the 10900K does not include a stock CPU cooler. This is one reason why certain CPUs have the stock coolers into them. Certain CPUs don't have the stock coolers. So it's recommended that you add a stock cooler to your part. Now we're going to click on the cooler. I'm just going to pick any random cooler. Bam. Now we're back in green. There's no issues. So that's one reason why I tell a lot of people to use PC Part Picker, so y'all won't have any issues down the line picking your parts. If you don't use this and you start buying parts, I'm gonna go ahead on and get the newest boards out there, which is the 500 series. So I'm gonna get the A520 series. Now you go ahead on and you buy a 32G processor. And I'm going to go ahead and show you that right now. When you buy certain boards, it lets you know that certain processors are compatible with the boards and certain processors are not. Let's go ahead on and get into that right now. Let's go AM4s. I'm going to go chipset. I know what chipsets I want to buy, which is the AMD A520. I'm just going to go ahead on and sort prices. I like to start from the lowest. I'm a very budget friendly, and I like to go ahead on and use 2 gigabytes of RAM because I do not need excessive power down the line. Now, when I built my rigs, I like to go ahead on and keep my rigs set up at basically from 16 gigabyte to 32 gigabyte. Now, this is a 2-stick memory. The max memory of this board is 64 gigabyte. So if you want to go ahead and put the full 64 in there, you go ahead and you buy your dual kit, 32 gigabyte RAM, and you install both those in. I'm going to go ahead and add that to the board. I'm at $60. I could go ahead and get it from Amazon.com. This is one reason why once you go ahead on and put this in, it will also give you, just like I said, give you where to buy from, and go ahead and keep you at a budget-friendly cost. Now the CPU. Now here's all my CPUs, and this is where a lot of people make their mistake. They want to add the wrong CPU to the board. See, one thing I like about the PC Power Picker, if you pick the A500, A520 series, it will let you know what CPU goes on the board. Now they got the newest, latest chip. If you're a newcomer, if you want to go ahead and get the fresh out new parts, always make sure you update your BIOS. If you don't update your BIOS, then you will not get a post. So I'm gonna go ahead and add the 5800X to the board. Bam! We got a red bar. That means we got a compatible issue. Let's click on the details. The AMD Ryzen 5800 3.8 GHz core does not include a stock cooler. Adding a cooler to your parts is recommended. And warning number 2, motherboard may need a BIOS update. Now, when you buy the 500 series, you're going to need 2 sets. You're going to need a laptop or an extra computer and a flash drive. No more than 8 to 16 gigabytes to install the flash BIOS update. When you do that, then you go to your manufacturer website. I'll be getting into that as well too. Now, once you go ahead on and add a stock cooler, because the new 5000 series don't come with no coolers, and make sure you update your BIOS before you do any install. Okay, enough said with that. Now, I also mentioned motherboard. When you pick your motherboards, we start picking your platforms. Intel, AMD, always go to the manufacturer website and understand what that motherboard is compatible with and what does it do. We all know what it does. It's supposed to go ahead and run your programs at ease. Now, if you put the wrong parts in, such as the RAM, etc., you will not get post. It will not boot up. Then you're going to sit down here and put a bad review on Newegg or Best Buy. Going to be angry because now you got to take it back because you did not follow simple directions. Okay. ASRock. Even though I didn't pick an ASRock board, let's go to products. Let's go to motherboards. And let's go ahead on and pick an 11. No, let me go ahead and pick an AM4 board so y'all understand what I'm talking about. Let's go with the Pro. Okay, here you got 4 slots of RAM, and you see the socket, and then you see M.2 drive. Now, if you want to boot off an M.2 drive, just like the SSD, they are faster. But keep in mind, when you put the M.2 on the board, the SATA 1 port is disabled, automatic. So you're going to have, because that M.2 counts as a SATA. So counts as a SATA SSD hard drive space that's already connected on. So when you put the M.2 in, it's automatically go ahead and disable one SATA port. Now, here, this board here is OC. Anything that's overclocking is error checking. So, let's go to the specs. This is what I love to do. I like to see what I'm messing with and understanding what I'm messing with. So, it's always good to go to the manufacturer websites and do your research. Once you do that, then you cannot go wrong. Now, if you want to know what memory it is, you want to go ahead on here. Here, you also, when you go to support, you also see the BIOS, the manual. If you need to download the manual, you got your CPU support list, or then you got your memory, what memory you can add on, etc. You cannot go wrong. That's why it's always mandatory you go to the manufacturer website and do your research on that product you pick. Okay, moving right along. Power and speed. Power is basically how much power wattage you want your board to pull. Now, if you are entry level user, I normally go ahead and keep my power supply wattage at $500 to $550. That's just for entry level regular base users. Now for mid users and extreme, like for me, both my rigs are set at 600 watts power supply, and I do a whole lot with them. So if I need to upgrade my GPU cards, I know I got the right power recommendation to do that. Now for extreme requires a lot, especially with the latest graphic cards that's out there. Extreme normally use 750 plus. Why? Because of the heavy demands you put on your personal computer. Person with heavy demands such as gaming, streaming, editing, etc. If you have an virtual reality device that handles that, and it puts a lot. 2, speed. Mostly entry levels, I normally keep them at. Now, if you do Intel, if I do a simple Intel entry level board, the highest you could go is 2,666 megahertz. Now, if you're an extremer, the highest you could go to is about 4,700 overclocking. So, and yes, I said overclocking because a lot of extremers go ahead and overclock their board for more power to go ahead and pump out more rates of the GPU and more speed coming off the PC and the memory. They want the full. Mid-level like us, we just go ahead and play it at 1080p. We don't overclock nothing. We happy. We buy the right parts, and we keep it moving. Now, preference. How you want your PC to look. Your PC needs to go head on and certain aesthetics. Here, I got one here with it got the RGB lighting in, got your RGB keyboard, you got your flat panel mouse, and 2, you might not want that. You may just want a basic closed-in case. Make sure when you choose your PC cases that it has airflow. You want air coming in and you want air coming out. This here helps keep your motherboard and your CPU cool instead of its peak performance. It also helps with the CPU cool because all that nice good cold air coming in and all the hot air going out is good. Now, when buying pre-builts, 2 things you want to keep in mind. Storage, power supply, what type motherboard they're using, how many sticks of RAM is in the system, etc. When you're buying pre-builts, and the best, especially you getting them from a retail store like Best Buy, etc. Always ask the store clerk that works in that department, give me information on this pre-built. I am interested in buying it. He gives you all the specs. Now, if you say, oh, if it's 8 gigabyte of RAM, tell him what type. You always want to keep your system at 16 gigabyte or higher. For entry levels, I like to go ahead and keep it at 16 gigabyte, more speed, more performance, well balanced. Mid gamers, same thing. 1080p. Because you're gonna add a GPU card, make sure when you buy your GPU card that you buy the right power supply that is recommended to operate that GPU. If it's not the right power supply, then you have to go ahead and switch that out to the right to recommended power supply. Certain GPUs go no higher than 600. The extreme GPUs go 700 or higher. So y'all want to keep that in mind. Once you go ahead on and figure, once you ask your store clerk that, then you good to go. Now, say for instance, you don't want to buy a pre-built, you want to go ahead on and pick your parts out and then have the store build them for you. They do that. The only store I know that does that, too bad we don't have no access to it here in Florida, is a Micro Center. You can buy all your parts right there in the store. A store representative will help you after you go ahead and tell them what type of platform you want to use, and what you want your PC to do. So they're going to go help you pick the right parts for your PC needs. And another good company I would recommend, if you can't find what you're looking for inside the store, is this company here, NZXT Builds. This company here is great. For you got your starter PC series starting at $699, and you got your NZX streaming PC. If you want to get into streaming, go ahead on and do some web content, stream some video games, etc., etc. You got they got everything good for you, so you cannot go wrong with that. I recommend this company. Everybody talk about this company. I heard some great reviews for this company, so you cannot go wrong and go with this company as in pre-built. Now, if you go ahead on and you do Best Buy, just like I said with Best Buy, they got great pre-builts too, but always ask the store representative in that department to go ahead and give you the breakdowns of the computer and see what's inside of it first before you go online and purchase it. Because you might like here this CyberPod has 8 gigabyte of RAM, so I know I need to go ahead on and buy another stick of RAM. The NVIDIA GeForce GTX 1660 it's a 4 gigabyte card. It plays 1080p games. It has 1 terabyte of hard drive storage, and it has an extra 240 gigabyte SSD for extra storage as well too. So you pretty much decent. But this is 8 gig of RAM here. You need to leave out the store with another stick of RAM. So make sure that the store rep gives you the full breakdown specs of the PC, and make sure if you need to buy any extra stuff for it, such as room memory, etc., make sure you take care of that before you walk out the store. Alrighty, we're coming down to the end of the tutorial. That should go ahead and cover your needs. If you don't, please you go ahead and watch it from the beginning. That's the main thing. And you can watch any other videos I did about building your PCs for the first time, and you cannot go wrong with that. I want to thank everybody for watching this wonderful tutorial. I love talking about PCs. I do a lot of entry-level builds. Can't go wrong with that. And I love what I do. It's that simple. Go ahead on and hit the like button. Subscribe to my channel. I got more great content coming your way. And I will put the description of NZXT Builds. If you're interested in purchasing a computer from them, you cannot go wrong with it. They have some computers that will be at your budget. So, enough said. Peace.